Hello everybody, and you're all very welcome again to another one of our Zoom meetings. Today we were thinking of looking at Halloween and at the ancient Irish festival, well, Celtic festival, which includes Britain, Wales, Scotland, of Samhain. And when I was looking it up before we started, I was just looking up actually what the word Samhain means. It's spelled Samhain, which is a Gaelic word, but it's pronounced Sow, S-O-W, in. So Samhain. And in Ireland here, Samhain means the month of November. It actually means that's what the month of November is in Irish. We have 3 festivals here in Ireland that are taken from the Irish language, which is, ye pronounce it Beltane, which is Baltana in Ireland, which is the month of May. And then we have Lunasa, which is a very interesting festival. I don't know if you ever watched the film Dancing at Lunasa. Lunasa is the month of August and Samhain is the month of November. And in Samhain, it also means the Lord of Darkness. And it's an old Celtic pagan tradition, which ties in with Halloween. And the word Halloween comes from is broken down into Hallow, which is saints, and All Hallows Eve, which is All Saints Eve. That's the 31st of October. And the 1st of November is the Saints' Day, All Saints' Day. And All Saints' Day is preceded, of course, by Halloween, which is the night before, which is the night that they have all of the celebrations. Now, an awful lot of the celebrations that we do now and the games and stuff that the children play, we've kind of lost actually the meaning of them. Like the trick-or-treating really, I suppose, is the most common one and the one that we would all relate to. And that actually came from America. But we did have a very old ancient tradition here, and it was also in the other Celtic countries of Scotland and Wales, where people dressed up. This is where the word guising means to dress up. There's a few words there that I think I'll explain to you that we had on the little snippet on Facebook. Souling means that they impersonate the souls that belongs to their ancestors, whom they feel are still earthbound and they haven't moved on. And that because we're entering a time of darkness, that Halloween marks the line between leaving the light and going into the dark. And the veil is supposedly very thin at that particular time of year between light and dark. And the belief was that souls made themselves known or appeared to people and they were looking for something. And what people did to appease the souls was they gave them food. So they dressed up in these outfits to impersonate other different souls in their families. And they went around from house to house and they collected food, and then they met, somewhere outside, and they would have a big bonfire and they would share all of the food that they had got with each other. And the idea of that was to appease the souls and kind of in honor of the souls. There was something else I was going to say there about it. Yes, about the celebrating. It's the celebrating, that whole thing of guising, souling and trick-or-treating is all to do with the appeasing of the souls, which isn't really kind of talked about now. It's more the fun element now, and it's more dressing up and just going out and having fun and dressing up in scary faces. But that's actually the origins of that, and that is hundreds of years old. People have been doing that for the longest time. And of course, Halloween also determines the harvest season. It's the end of the harvest and the beginning of the winter. So people in ancient times used to gather and they used to share the harvest. They would share the crops that they had sown and reaped at this particular time. And they would store their stuff for the winter, and they would store food for their animals just as preciously as they would store their own food for themselves. Like apples, for instance, that were taken off the trees. They had no, deep freezers, and they had no elaborate ways of storing food. So they used to actually wrap the apples in newspaper, and they would put them into a cardboard box, and that would actually hold the apples as long as they didn't touch each other. And I think that's where the saying, one bad apple in the box came from, that it originated in that tradition. They would store their apples that way, and like there would be nuts and various things that they would store. Like potatoes was another thing that they used to store, and they used to store those outside, where they would dig a kind of a little hole, not very deep, in the soil, and the potatoes would be put into it. They would put them up in a little stack shaped like a V. They would cover them with straw, and then they would cover that again with soil. And all of those potatoes would survive the winter. And when they would want them, they would just go out to this little stack and open up a little corner and take them out, and they would cover it back again. And the frost couldn't get to them with the covering of the soil and the straw, which kept the potatoes warm and kept them separate from the soil. But all of this, in the celebrations that they used to have, it was all about sharing all of the foods and all of the stuff that they had reaped over the harvest, and sharing that with everybody else. And it has gone on into, what it is today, like where it involved a lot of feasting, obviously. And it has gone on to what it is today now. They used to have these traditions as well, where they used to carve out turnips, and they used to put a lamp into the turnip. Now it's a pumpkin. And that tradition of pumpkin has come from America, actually. In the Celtic tradition, it was always a turnip, because the pumpkins, I don't know if they grow so well in this climate. I'm not sure, to be honest, but it was always a turnip. And the idea of it was, the name for this light that people used to carry and children used to carry was the jack-o'-lantern. Did anybody ever hear that term?
Yeah.
Yeah, jack-o'-lantern. And the story behind that was that Jack, that he was known as Stingy Jack, and he invited the devil for a drink. This is the story, this is the mythology. And what the devil did was, he gave him this light, he gave him a coal, a burning ember of coal, and he sent him off into the bogs. And the bogs in Ireland would be very flat. They would be very wet at this time of year. They would actually be quite dangerous, really. You would need more than a burning ember of coal to see where you're going. And that this flickering light used to be seen through the bogs, because this was a lost soul. And the children then, as time went on, they also used to carve out actually turnips, until the tradition came from America of carving out the pumpkin. But the idea of that is that they can see where they're going, and that they will ward off any evil spirits by carrying this little light, that they will ward off any evil spirits. So it's all really based on kind of spirits that are lurking around in the dark and lurking around in the fog and haven't really moved on. And as we have developed more ourselves and evolved more, we have, I suppose, a better idea of what that might be. It might be souls that somehow feel trapped. But at that particular time, people did feel a great sense of connection with the people who had just died and had moved on, and with their ancestors. They didn't feel as distant from them as we do now, because of the world that we're living in now, which is, the modern world is very technologically based, and we're not nearly as in touch with nature as we used to be. So we don't have that same kind of connection that we did have. But the ancient people had that as just a given, that they just knew they would just have contact with these souls, and they just knew that, they hadn't, and they would say prayers for them at their gatherings. And also, like, the 1st of November is known as All Saints, the 2nd of November, All Souls. And in the Catholic tradition, which is a Christian, I suppose, but I don't know about other traditions, But they did have a tradition. I don't know if it's still done nowadays, but they had a tradition on All Souls Day where people would visit churches. And you went in and you prayed for a particular soul. You kind of communicated with the soul. You asked the soul what it needed. You prayed for the soul to move on. And when you had done that for a particular soul, you went out of the church and you stood outside for a minute and you thought about who you might need to go in and pray for, and then you went back in again. And people would be going in and out of the church, you know, for about an hour. You'd see, and it was known as visitations. And I remember one time my mother bringing me with her to accompany her to the church for this. I had no idea really what was going on, but she said to me when we were going in, I want you to pray for your granny, which was her mother. And I said, fine. And I said, what will I say? And she said, oh, just talk to her and say a prayer that she's happy now and all of this. And I felt she was actually. And she was also my godmother, this particular granny. So I went in and I did that and I came back out and I was standing up looking pretty lost, not knowing what to do next. But all of the people who were there came over to me and they were all saying, when you go in, will you pray for her? And they would give me the name. And then I'd do that and I'd come back out and there'd be another one waiting in the queue. And I went to my mother when it was all over and I said, why was everybody asking me to pray for all these people? Sure, I have no idea who they even are. And she said, oh, that's just because you're a child and they know that the child's prayers are very pure. And I said, oh, right. But it was a nice tradition. And actually there was something about it, now that I look back on it from an adult lens, there was something very special about being asked to do that by all of the adults. It's interesting that I remember it. I remember that in great detail, and I remember that with the relief that they would, be on their faces when I'd come back out after I would have done it. So there was something quite special about that. But that tradition is actually never really talked about at all. But I decided today that I would talk about it because it was part of the culture here, very much it was part of the culture here when we were growing up. As I said, I don't know if it's honoured in the same way now because I don't practice the Catholicism myself, I suppose, in the same way now. So I don't know if there's anything you want to ask me. I mean, the whole idea of spirits and fairies, is very much alive and well in the Celtic tradition. So it wouldn't be something that would be foreign at all to Celts to be talking about souls and talking to souls and talking about fairies and seeing fairies and that kind of thing, in the ancient Ireland and in the ancient Wales and Scotland too. When I was looking it up, I saw that, this thing of souling happened in Britain, Ireland, Germany, and Austria, and Martina, which might surprise you. And they had this thing as well called the soul cake. They used to make a big cake and it was for the souls. And the people would all meet at the party again whenever they had their celebrations, and they would have a piece of soul cake. And they would say when they'd be taking their piece of cake, who they were having the piece of cake for, and they would, they would nominate it to that particular person. So yes, Andrea is just saying there she's going to have to make a soul cake. Yeah, I'd love one, Andrea. So really, as you can see, it's all centered around that. It's all really centered around the spirit world, but it's kind of the darker side of it, It's kind of, the souls that were a little bit lost and that were a little bit in darkness. And it's kind of centered around that. So that's kind of, I suppose, more or less all about the traditions in the Celtic area of the world, unless you have anything that you need to ask me about.
And Mary, there's a couple of films out that about the traditional Irish fairy stories. Have you seen them? Secret of the Kells, I think one of them's called. And there's another one as well. They refer to like a half a water and half land god or goddess called Circe or something. Not Circe. What's it called now? But there's some rich traditions in Ireland, isn't there? And especially with all of the old sacred sites that are still there as well. I mean,
Yes.
we don't really have much folklore in this country, really, relating to
Yeah,
fairies.
yeah.
But Ireland, they still tell the stories to the children, don't they?
Ireland has a lot of fairy forts. I don't know if they're in England at all, but the Fae, they were known as the Fae, and they actually inhabited the land before we did. So they're very ancient, and they're my grandmother, who was born in the 1800s. She told us before she died that, I mean, she was a very old lady when we were very young. And she told us before she died that Song of the Sea, oh, I see it there, yeah.
That's film's beautiful.
Yeah, that they would have been aware of the Fae, and they would have been aware of the fairies, and they would have, this whole thing of mythology, and changelings and all of that. Like, she would tell us stories about stuff like that, but it was being questioned a lot when I was young, and there were people kind of really not believing in it a lot. But when I look back on it, I actually think that in all of the mythology, there's a certain element of truth. There is a certain amount of truth in it. And it's because we're so removed from that kind of era and what it was like then that we find it very hard to believe. I must turn on the chat. I can't see anybody's comments, but I can see there's comments coming in.
Did you have any rituals you used to do, Mary, to appease the Fae folk?
No, we were actually a bit afraid of them, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were afraid of them, and I suppose it was a healthy respect, really, because we knew from the likes of my grandmother and more ancient people that you just didn't meddle with them, and they had they used to have areas in the fields that were kind of circular, right? That it'd be like a circular kind of a mound, but it wasn't high in the middle. It was like a circular wall of clay, we'll say, with a flat middle. And then there were all trees growing around it. And nobody was ever encouraged to go there. Like the energy was different inside of those circular areas. And any farmers never ever cultivated that part of land. If there was one of those in your field, you just worked around it, but you never tried to take down the trees, or you never tried to flatten it, because it was considered to be unlucky. And I think that was because that really was where they lived, and it was considered to be interfering with their home and stepping on their journeys, as we would say these days. So, but they're all over the place in Ireland. They're all over the place. Like there'd be one in kind of every farm almost would have some sort of a fairy fort.
Are they called the Shay, Mary? Is that another word? I know it's not spelt like that. The Irish fairy. Have you? Well,
the she.
She.
She,
SIDHE, which is totally confusing. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that the same thing in Ireland?
That's actually used as a name as well. It's changed a slight bit. It's SIDHBH, which is scythe, which is a word that they use. There's a lot of people here called scythe. It's a real old Irish name. And it originates, in that. There's a play, I forget now what it was called. It was a Juno and the Paycock. There was an actress in it called Scythe, but you wouldn't hear that name in any other country. It's really, really Irish.
Mary, Laura, my cousin and I went on a woodland folklore course the other day, and you were talking about the farmers and the fairy ring. The chap that was leading it is called Jonathan Hewitt, and he was talking about the hawthorn tree. And I'm not sure whether it was in Ireland or Wales he was talking about, but he was saying that somebody wanted to develop some land, and there was this grove of hawthorn trees, and nobody would take on the work. So the chap did it himself. It was DeLorean. That's it. It was DeLorean, the car manufacturer.
Yes, yeah.
And apparently, after he did that, he built on this land, and his business went bankrupt, and he had nothing but bad luck.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
they definitely do say that. Sorry, now I'm just taking something off another computer here, because I was going to read something for you about Newgrange. But it's really all I have said, to be honest. There's kind of nothing new in it. But there was that belief here that if you interfered with them, you had bad luck. And there were stories to match that as well. You know, such a farmer did this and this has happened to him and or one of his children or his family. And there would always be some evidence, you know, that they had some bad luck after they did it. I don't know how true that is. I never experienced any of that myself.
Mary, it's true. I'm a fairy, and I can tell you, I'm the kindest person in the world. But if you mess with me, that's the end of it.
So you know what? Don't mess with Andrea.
Don't mess with you, Andrea.
No. Don't mess with a fairy, not with Andrea.
I know. Fairy. No, that is the belief here. You do not mess with them. You respect them and you give them their space.
In the garden, directed to the neighbors. Don't piss off the fairy. Be warned.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with like the precognitive workforce and so forth as well, because I know that the fairy energies in my home are very supportive and they're very beneficial for us. But you know, it does require, like with the ancestral work, a certain element of giving from the people in the now as well, doesn't it? You know.
Yes, absolutely.
As long as you acknowledge and you give something, but to I suppose to not take on the warnings and to show utter disrespect and contempt, that just opens up the whole of the universe against you, really, doesn't it? In a way, you're asking for those lessons.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's only recently that fairies have been seen as all light and, you know, sort of fairy story, all goodness and light, really, because the fae have always been sort of there's always been a dark side to them, hasn't there? And they have been people that command respect. Otherwise, you know, you will learn a lesson.
I think there's both to them, actually. I do think there's both to them. And I think that's why we have to be so careful, you know, to respect them and respect their culture and respect where they live, or even though we can't see them. But it's interesting that my grandmother always thought she could. I don't know whether she could or not, but she thought she did anyway. But if she thought she did, she obviously did. I'm not going to question it. But it's interesting, you know, it's interesting the ancient ancestors of the land. And I think that there is a healthy respect for that here. You know, there's a healthy respect for, like, the water is another thing here that, you know, you'd have a lot of people here who are natural diviners who can just go out, and I'm sure there are all over the world too, but they would be able to go out and they would be able, with the particular, I think it's a hazel stick, and it would just dip down when they'd walk over water, and they would be able to tell you, no matter how far down it was able to do that. But not everybody who carried that stick could do that particular thing. So there was obviously some sort of an energy relationship between the person, you know, or some ability to be able to sense in or send energy back and forth from the stick to the person, you know, so that they could actually intuit really where the water was. And
your 2 feet are the tuning forks, aren't they?
Yes,
that's what your 2 feet are, that's what your legs on the land are doing.
Yeah, that's true, Laura. Now,
Just
Laura was going to talk about the ancestors. Or do you have anything to ask me about anything else, Laura, before we move on?
Yeah, just a few things there. I think I read somewhere that the trick or treat could go back to the offerings that we make the land at this time.
Well,
so I know,
I
know. Sort of, we think of it as coming from America and so on. But I just thought that was an interesting one. And I'm very interested in, obviously, because I'm English and you're just over the water from me in Ireland, and we share a lot of the Celtic history. And Celts and Druids were great bards, great storytellers, which is what Lynn and I experienced on our day with Jonathan Hewitt, who is a wonderful source of inspiration for the Celtic life. And hopefully we'll have him on this Zoom for the winter solstice. But I've lost my thread of where I was going. Tell me what I just said, Mary.
You were talking about the Celtic tradition. We were talking about trick or treating.
Bards. Yeah, stories. Has anybody ever had anything, or in Ireland, is it a time of telling stories at all?
Everything in Ireland was a time of telling stories, Laura.
You really embraced the Celtic traditions, didn't you?
There was never an opportunity missed.
No.
Go to any Irish pub and you'll see that stories.
They're just fabulous storytellers, and they'll draw it out forever and a day, you know, and you'll be hooked. You just will not be able to go until they get to the end of what it is that they're saying.
It's best language to swear in as well. Makes all the swear words sound so much better.
Yes. And they'd also have at those celebrations, and just to go back, Laura, to what you were saying about the trick or treating, yes, it is very much now made our own. I mean, all really it is a different term for what we would have called, and the Scottish and the Welsh as well, souling, which was dressing up, putting on different faces, whatever it was. I mean, people wouldn't have much. I didn't have an awful lot to dress up in, even when I was young. But the whole idea of that disguise was that you were dressing up as the soul that you were representing. That's actually what that was about. And the trick or treating is really the same thing. And you're giving the food back to the land and all of that. But one of the other things that they would have here when they would meet and do all their offerings and sharings, they would have homemade brews as well. Another thing they were very good at, actually. And that would be brought to these parties. You know, these were nearly always outdoors, because you see the bonfire provided the center. It provided that center of the energy, it provided the space, and everybody just gathered around it, and it provided the heat, because it is cold here usually at Halloween. Like you can get an odd one that's nice, but even now it's not nice this year. It's gone into the winter, you know, it's gone dark and wet and cold.
And is that the bonfire?
Laura,
is that the bonfire that comes from the bonfire of the slaughtering of the animals and the bones put into the fire?
Exactly, that's what gives the name. They used to slaughter the animals, and they would share out the flesh, and they would burn the bones on the fire. They would offer those, and it was all offerings. It was offerings to the ancestors and offerings to, you know, the souls that were still here and all of that.
Great respect for those animals as well.
There was.
Yes, it's an honouring.
Yes, it's an honouring. And sometimes the meat even might be cooked on the fire. You know, the bones would be put in and the meat cooked. So Laura, did you want to say anything else before you go on to the ancestral piece that you were going to have a look at? I'm just looking here to see if I have anything else on the ancient traditions. I mean, is there anything else you want to know about the ancient traditions?
Well, just interesting, because I think, is it Tara Hill aligns to the Samhain sunrise?
It does. And I'm actually going to read, now that you've asked me that, I have a piece here on my other laptop. It's about Tara Hill, but it's really what I've said already, but I'm going to just read it for you, okay? So there's another hill, called Lactica, which is a bigger place than Tara, but it's not talked about as much. Now, I'll just read this out. As millions of children and adults participate in the fun of Halloween on the night of October 31st, few will be aware of its ancient Celtic roots in the Samhain festival. In Celtic Ireland, about 2,000 years ago, Samhain was the division of the year between the lighter half, summer, and the darker half, winter. At Samhain, the division between this world and the other world was at its thinnest, allowing spirits to pass through. The family ancestors were honoured and invited home. That's interesting. The family ancestors were honoured and invited home, while harmful spirits were warded off. People wore costumes and masks to disguise themselves as harmful spirits and thus avoid harm. Bonfires and food played a large part in the festivities. The bones of slaughtered livestock were cast into the communal fire, household fires were extinguished, and started again from the bonfire. So they would have seen that as a kind of a good luck thing to do, to bring back the embers of the bonfire, which would be the ashes of the dead animals, and start a new fire in the house with that. Where was I? Christianity incorporated the honouring of the dead into the Christian calendar with All Souls, which is All Hallows, on November the 1st. followed by All Souls on All Saints is All Hallows, sorry, followed by All Souls on November the 2nd. The wearing of costumes en masse to ward off harmful spirits survived as Halloween costumes. The Irish immigrated to America in great numbers during the 19th century, especially around the time of famine in Ireland during the 1840s. The Irish carried their Halloween traditions to America, where today it is one major holiday in the year, and it's very big in America now. Through time, other traditions were blended into Halloween. For example, American harvest time tradition of carving pumpkins, which is, as we said, that's where that came from. The hills in the Boyne Valley were associated with Samhain in the Irish Celtic tradition. Tailloch and Tara were the location of the Great Fire Festival, which began on the eve of Samhain. Tara was also associated with Samhain. However, it was secondary to Tailloch in this respect. The entrance passage to the Mound of the Hostages on the hill of Tara is aligned with the rising sun around Samhain. The Mound of the Hostages, 4,500 to 5,000 years old, suggesting that Samhain was celebrated long before the Celts arrived in Ireland about 2,500 years ago. So it goes back like that far, it goes back 5,000 years, you know, and it's interesting that they have the sun coming in, because they have another one at Newgrange for the winter solstice. People come from all over the world too, but you can't get to it, you have to book it, and it's impossible actually to get to it. Where the sun comes in at that particular, there's a shaft where it just comes through, and when it's at its lowest point in the sky.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, that's it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw in something totally random now.
Yeah, go ahead.
We talk about the jack-o'-lanterns, and then if you notice how much Jack is used in fairy stories, in nursery rhymes, Jack and Jill, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. We even have a Union Jack. And I think Matty's nodding, he might know this. What I have learned is, because Jack is a diminutive of John, so diminutive means to make small.
Yeah.
So the system was already making us small and imprinting it onto us in nursery rhymes and in the name Jack. Now, it doesn't mean to say that that is carried now with people who were called Jack, but originally that was my understanding of why it was used. Has anyone else read that anywhere? Matty?
No, I haven't.
And the beanstalk, yes, Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah.
I haven't actually thought much into it, but when you said it, I thought, wow, that name Jack, and as I pass in my mind across, it comes up all the time.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that was just one perspective I read, which I just thought was an interesting note that I would put in there.
It is interesting, and I know people here usedn't like, especially mothers, jack of all trades, they usedn't like, you know, when people would shorten their children's names, like Michael might be called Mick or Mickey or whatever, you know, they didn't like that. They always felt that it was kind of demeaning of the name. So they used to sometimes choose a name that couldn't be interfered with because they didn't like it, you know, just the mothers in particular, as I said. But it's interesting, yes, that term jack-o'-lanterns, you know, Jack the lad. Shit. Did you ever hear that? Did you?
yes, and Jack shit, someone's just put up there. When you start thinking about it, there's no other, is there another name that's used like that? I don't think there is there?
There isn't. It's an interesting thing to observe, because it comes from the word John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a smaller version, isn't it? Diminutive.
It is.
Yeah. Just interesting.
Yeah.
And
they used to say, Laura, they used to say as well, Jack the lad. I don't know if you heard me saying that. Did you hear me saying?
Yeah, Jack the lad. I don't know whether that's in the US at all. It's definitely very British, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. They say it here too.
Jack was also it was a hero character, wasn't he?
Was he?
Jack was partly a hero character.
I didn't know that. What, Jack?
Yeah. Like in Hans Christian Andersen and all that, he was you know, somebody like Jack the lad is somebody to be emulated, and somebody who had a lot of character and did things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I see Caroline is saying here that John is often used for people with no identity, like John Doe. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
I was in
jacked or hijacked. Did you see that one, Laura, from Alan?
No.
Yeah. Getting jacked or hijacked. And even, you know, the term given to the jack that you use if you have a puncture, you know, on your cars, it's jack that you take out to.
Yeah. 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 Interesting.
Yeah.
I just, hold on, just deal with my grandson, sorry. I was just going to say, could other people, if they'd like to contribute hold on, darling, their experiences of Halloween would be interesting to hear, wouldn't it, Mary?
It would, yes.
What their take on whether they knew any of this.
Yeah, that has any kind of particular memories that stand out for you.
Not really. Halloween is one of those quite misunderstood times of the year, really. In England, it really is just like in America. It's just the excuse for everybody to make money or spend money. Never really looked into it further. The more I hear about these old traditions and these old places, and the more I see these sacred sites, the more I yearn for more people to understand what it's really about. You know, they just sat there doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
I'd love to come to Ireland.
I think when it was commercialized too. Would you? Well, you're welcome anytime. I think when it was commercialized as well, that it lost a lot of, you know, its authenticity. It became about the costumes and about the sweets, but the depth to it was kind of lost, as it is to a lot of ancient traditions, really.
Yeah, I agree with Maddie too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, same as America. It was just for fun, dress up. But I was wondering if, like, the music, like, did they have dance or music? Because we have like spooky music. Was that to ward off this, you know,
they would have
souls
parties, Amy? Yes, it would involve music, because an awful lot of the ancient people would be able to play. They were all self-taught. My parents were self-taught. They could play the violin, they could play the accordion, and they could do that by learning the rhythm from by ear. They didn't have sheets of music, but they could all play and they could all dance. So that you would have certain people at the gatherings that would play, and then you'd have other people that would dance.
There were times where, you know, you had to make the most of people getting together in those times, and you know, and the things that you had as well. So you would have had the shamanic side of it as well. The idea of taking the fire from the ceremonial fire, that was the big ceremonial fire.
I know.
That's a blessing. You know, that's not just auspiciousness. That's shamanic. You know, that's shamanic practice. And there would have been lots of, you know, babies made at these kind of parties and things as well, and bonds made and bonds broken.
Yes.
I imagine it would have been a hubbub of human activity, seen and unseen.
Yes. They used to actually they used to keep some of the embers from the fire, and they used to put them, you know, on the soil near where they would plant the seeds in the spring. So they felt that they were giving a blessing to the crops. And that it was do you? And it was a continuation. There was a certain continuation in it too, you see, because they were taking the embers from the harvest fire, which was the harvest fire to celebrate the crops, we'll say, of this year, and taking that energy and that blessing to the crops of next year and putting it down beside the seeds and the whatever they were planting. So they were very connected, really, to nature.
I don't know whether I've missed something. It was the Irish who took it to America in the 1840s or so, wasn't it?
Yes, when they all left,
took the tradition
during the famine. Yes, they took
the
tradition, and the Americans really took it on big time. And it's a very commercial kind of tradition out there now, you know. But like everything is now, like Christmas is the same, isn't it? You know. So
I think it's bigger, isn't it, than Christmas?
Is it? It probably is.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I've heard.
Right, okay. So, are we ready to have a look at the ancestors, or does anyone want to ask anything else before we move on to that? No? I forget it is, oh yeah. The need fire. So it's not traditionally celebrated in France. It just started in the 90s. Of course, Holly, I see that there, Caroline.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, they really, you know, took it over into the spooky, you know, they made some very scary films around Halloween.
Just to disconnect us from our ancestors, really.
And to frighten us, I think, too. I think there was an element of kind of invoking fear in people around that time.
And if you have a mystical experience and you go into fear, it generally shuts off that mystical experience. So it kind of, in a way, making it all about fear was a very smart way to negate any sort of benefit that you'll get from the unseen.
I just think that's what happened with the movies, because they were very scary. Like, I know people enjoyed them, but there were children find it quite scary, you know, sometimes even still. They find that whole idea of the dressing up and the faces and the idea of the spirits, like, even though it's not really talked about that much, children do pick that up. And they are quite scared of it sometimes. They won't go out doing the trick-or-treating unless they're accompanied and all of that.
Well, they're absolutely, Alan. Yeah, inversion of truth and tradition. Yeah,
true. Yes.
They're not taught what it's really about. Does anybody actually do any ancestral sort of anything on Samhain, Halloween? Anybody here do anything that's sort of ceremonial at all?
I've generally avoided it, Laura. I always kind of put it with Satanism, really. You know, in my mind, it was kind of one of those things. I was like, well, awful things must happen on that night, and I never really saw it. It wasn't until the last couple of years I started to look a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That you kind of thought it was Satanism, because I think that's the slant that was given to a lot of the paganism. And the paganism tradition, like, actually, when we're looking back at it now, it had an awful lot of, my phone is ringing, I hope somebody answers it. It had an awful lot of richness in it and an awful lot of connection that we missed because, you know, it was paganism, it didn't have God in it. So I think that then if it didn't have God in it, it had the devil in it. So it was demonized, you know.
And it still sticks today. Even myself, I look at my altar. And I think when people come in my house, like workmen or people come in my house and they must see my altar, they must think I'm a devil worshipper. You know, it's still to this day, you know, you look at it and there's blood, there's skulls, there's this, there's that, there's all kinds of, you know, but it's not meant that way. But yet, you know, anything that is like that is misconstrued, isn't it?
There's still a huge element of that here still. And I would imagine in England too, you know, if people came into the house and there was an altar, they certainly would be looking at you kind of wondering.
Very much so. Very much so.
What are you really up to when there's nobody around, you know, and they think it's casting spells. And just about the spells, like, it's interesting that the witches are never mentioned in anything you look up about Halloween. And like, I saw a piece on Facebook, and I forget who posted it recently, that witches were actually women. And, you know, isn't that just so true? You know, they were called witches because, again, like Jack for John, it made them somehow smaller and darker, and you know, they were actually women that were in touch, and they were totally abused and murdered, actually, a lot of them. Yeah.
Well, here you are. Here's a little bit on a witch. To be a witch is to love and be loved, to know everything and nothing at all, to move among the stars while staying on earth, to change the world around you and within yourself, to share and give while receiving the whole while, to dance and sing and hold hands with the universe, to honour the gods, goddesses and yourself, to do magic, not just perform it, be honourable or do nothing at all, to know what you feel is right and good. To be a witch is to harm no one, to know the ways of the old and see beyond the veil and the barriers, to follow the moon, to be one with the gods, to teach and learn, acknowledge the truth, to live with the earth, not just on it.
You see, the witches originally were the wise women, weren't they? They were like the female shamans of the times. I don't know if anybody reads any Philippa Gregory or the historical novels, but she's really, they're all factual based. And she wrote a book called The Wise Woman, which was about, you know, the witch and how they were persecuted by Henry VIII. And that's when they burned down all the monasteries and you know, all the convents and everything. So it's sort of from that time when paganism was, you know, frowned upon.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, even the term witch, I just don't like it. I think it's very demeaning, and it is deliberately so, I feel, to just demean what those women were about and what they were able to do, and all of that at that.
There were dark witches. There were dark witches.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were.
Yeah.
Like everything, you know, there are dark and light. But
I think even the way that we are now, with our understanding, the way we view the world, I think if you see a lot of traditional pagan practices, they could be viewed as quite brutal, quite misunderstood. I don't think we'd understand a lot of the processes. It would seem unnecessary to us, a lot of it, I think.
But they were, and the Druids too, actually, who were
Especially
here,
the
you know,
Druids.
they were quite brutal.
They were.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Absolutely.
they were the law keepers, weren't they, really?
They were.
They kept the society together, I suppose, originally.
They did, but they did it in a very brutal kind of manner, to be honest. You know, there was a lot of brutality around it. I suppose, you know, it comes with the times as well that people lived in. You know, there was a kind of an acceptance almost.
Exactly. And also,
of
you've got to think about the energies as well. That, you know, that we have times like we're going to a point now where magic is more potent because the, you know, position of the planet and where we are in all the alignments and so forth. So there must come a point where practitioners have to go to extreme levels to practice their magic. Blood is a very potent thing to use in magic.
Yeah, and we're evolving, you see, too. We're not operating as much out of the chakras now as we did then. Like, that was very much survival mode. You know, people hadn't time to be going up into the chakras and going off on shamanic journeys, because even though they were doing it and they didn't know it, as you say, with the fire, but it was very much about survival. And like, when you look at the lower chakras and the energy that they sort of bring, it is about that, isn't it? Fight or flight. And, you know, there was an acceptance, even in the schools, there was quite an acceptance of corporal punishment at that time. So it was quite accepted, which was difficult. And you can even see it portrayed in some of the older films, you know, as well. This was used as a way of keeping people in control and keeping people, yeah.
Well, I'd like to... Sorry, Lynn, you go.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, someone did.
No,
sorry, Sue.
Hello, Laura. It's Sue.
Susan.
Hi, Susan. How you doing?
Hi, Susan.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I was just going to say that actually it was a lot of the herbalists and a lot of the midwives and the wise women that were also castigated out under that witch paradigm, wasn't it? So they would have been the herbalists and the medicine women. As much as anything. But you were asking about Samhain and about celebration. So I kind of celebrate most of the festivals really throughout the sort of 8-fold year. I don't really consider myself a pagan, but I'm definitely on the shamanic path and practitioner. So I did want to share, because I haven't been on video for some time.
We've missed you.
So nice to see you all and to show up on the video instead of just listening. But I wanted to share, Laura, that the work that you've taken us through before with the ancestors has been profoundly impactful on a really beautiful level to my practice.
Wow.
Completely.
That's brilliant.
And I was away in Portugal, and I was like, oh, today I'm going to listen to the Art Nouveau. And I went to the beach, and then I listened to you, and it was like, you're sitting on the beach, and I'm like, perfect. So it was really lovely. And I just wanted to share that I think there had been some resistance within me about working with the ancestors. I think because I know that a lot of our inherited debt and issues come from the ancestors. So working with you earlier in the year with the healed and resolved ancestors, the illuminated ancestors, was like one of the best gifts of 2020. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's completely flipped my perspective on it all in a way that my fear has just diminished now. And I haven't completed yet, but I've been working on meditation and healing for Saturday around the ancestors. So yeah, I will be working with my ancestors. I'm doing a healing and a fire on Saturday night after I get back from a gong bath.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'll be lighting the fire about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I think I might be lucky enough to have a few little people around, maybe bring some instruments and see if we can't,
lovely,
have a celebration in the name of, really.
That is music to my ears, Sue.
Make sure you keep the offerings going all year round as well, because with the ancestor spirits, it's like you can be affected by that negativity. But in order for you to get any positivity from the ancestors, you have to make your offerings. You have to give energy to the ancestors that are able to help you. And then once you make those offerings, it can be so simple as well. Even just a little prayer every day. Then you give energy to the ancestors to work on your behalf and to sort out all of that shit that's going on in the background. So super powerful.
Yeah, for sure. I've been sending healing to the ancestors for decades and doing work with them, but it was about being open to receive. I had a blip in my matrix about, I was like, yeah, safe boundary, please, ancestors. Give me my me angelic beings, or give me my higher self, but the family can sort of stay on the other side of my barrier. So yeah, it was lovely, Laura, so thank you. It was a blessing and a real gift.
Thank you so much. We're going to do another one today.
Yes, we are.
Your ancestors also you. Remember that as well. It's not just the people that have lived on the land. It's also you and all the lives that you've ever had, past, present, and future. That's another part of your ancestry.
Yeah, for sure. I've been doing a lot of work with my future self, and I think that's going to be the key element to our meditation on Saturday too.
Good stuff.
Brilliant. And you know how to deal with the unhealed ancestors. Well, first of all, that any work you do on yourself will heal your DNA lineage, but you also know that the way, I think we did that at the same time, is to create yourself in the golden egg, which puts the unhealed ancestors outside of your golden egg. If you remember that, we pulled them down through the crown chakra in golden light. Yeah, I don't know how many people remember that meditation. And we let them go to our blood and our bones. And then we push it out through our solar plexus and see ourselves in a golden egg, and the unhealed ancestors are the other side of that. And then we can help them cross over with, I have a continual rainbow bridge on my shrine. So it's part of my evening prayer time is to offer that rainbow bridge to all those who have died without resolution, who've died with unfinished business, died in a lot of pain, all those who haven't crossed to the realm of the dead. And our good, true and beautiful ancestral helping spirits do the work of taking them over that rainbow bridge. And that is a huge, huge service to the unseen world, to be a rainbow bridge builder and to just open that portal. And we can all do that. We can all do that so easily. I coloured my own rainbow bridge. It was fun. It's like being at school again. And of course, we've had a lot of rainbows with the lockdown over here. I don't know whether earlier in the year there, and that made me smile all the time. I thought, I wonder how many people, other than saying whatever it was for to support our national health system, was it, Mathew? I can't remember. But a lot of people, if only they did the crossing over of those who are stuck in the unseen. What a great service that is.
That is the power of being in the now. That is the power of being in the now. That's what that means when Andrew says things like that. It is us, the beings of the now, that hold power. We just conduits for it, and all we have to do is just make that choice. Yeah. And however we choose to make that choice, that manifests in the unseen world.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that was lovely hearing what you said, Sue. I don't know if anybody noticed on the Facebook post, I actually put one of my ancestral shrines up. And I think it's really beneficial to do a ceremony like Sue was saying on Halloween. I'll definitely be doing one on Samhain, whatever you want to call it, whatever your belief. Definitely be doing it with a fire because it's full moon. But I think because of the lot of commercialism and negative connotations we've got with Halloween, that is the first way you can flip the frequencies, is to have your fire and all good things, you know, all prayers and connecting with the unseen realm. And the reason it's so wonderful on Halloween is because it's the thinning of the veil. The veil is at its thinnest. So why on earth wouldn't you be out there or indoors? It doesn't matter. Why wouldn't you be connecting to your ancestors? Because that's the one that there are actually other times and other places, as you know, you can go to connect with them, you know, in the boundaries that we talked about, in the sort of the thinning of the veil, like we spoke about the sea and the shoreline, that boundary, like in mist and fog. There's all sorts of other portals, I think, where the veil is thinner that we can use. But certainly Halloween is one of those that you've got to, and as an ancestral medium, that I've had prayers going over my wood now for a long time, my recorded prayers. You know all the alchemy, all of you on this Zoom know all the alchemy that can be done. And you can obviously slant it towards real connection with your ancestors at this time. I also have taken to baking a cake. So I do a whole cake as an offering for the ancestors at that time, and I take that, mine's usually outside, I take that outside with me. And contrary to what I thought before, you can actually share that or eat that afterwards. In the beginning as a novice, I used to let it rot on my shelf at home, and then I realised that actually it's not a very nice offering to have gone off food on your shelf for the ancestors. It's a bit like having dead flowers there, isn't it?
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because that's been a question for me, is if you do an offering, especially a food offering, how do you move that along without letting it rot? What's the proper way to handle that? These are some of the things that we have lost over time because it has been taken over and so commercialized, you know.
Absolutely. Who am I talking to? Sorry, you're not on my screen.
This is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, yeah.
Sorry, Zimmerman. Hi, sorry, I didn't recognise your voice. I can't see it at the moment. Yeah, okay, Sarah. So as I say, I didn't understand that in the beginning, and then I learnt that it is at the time when you go to your altar, maybe any day, you take something with you, like it can even be a glass of water, and give them a glass of water. If you make a cup of tea, maybe give them a cup of tea. Because what it is you're communing with the unseen realm, and as if they're there, and they are there. So it's not as if they're there, it's sort of, I actually picture them there, I envisage them there. And it's how you would treat a friend who's come into your house. So when the tea's not drunk, that they take the energy of that at that time, they take what is needed, and then you remove it. Now, because I like an alchemical process in all my handling and dealing with the ancestors, I would probably say some prayers and return it to the earth. You can drink it yourself. It's not disrespectful to do that. You can, give your cake to others. It's not disrespectful. All that you're doing, what I do by the cake that I'm putting on my altar to Samhain particularly, is I want them to welcome them into my home at this time of the thinning veil. It's hospitality to the ancestors, and they will get what they need from it at the time. And then, don't just put it in the bin, is what I'm saying, and remove it, but remove it while it's still edible. Even if you put it out for the birds, I would remove it while it still has some life force in it, let's say, so that can be continued.
That's right. And Laura, it really is also to do, Sarah, about your prayer process, because as long as you lay out your intentions, then they are fulfilled. So it is, you know, you can offer in any way you want, as long as the prayers offer that energy to the ancestors. And so my personal process is to make the offering to the land and to the ancestors, leave the offering out. And then in the morning, sometimes I'll leave it for 2 days if I'm busy or I can't be bothered, I don't know, for whatever reason. But generally I'll leave it for a night under the moonlight, and then I'll take it and I'll put it into the compost heap. And I say, now I give you back to the land from where you came, and make a blessing like that as well. The cycle of life continues. Sometimes the squirrels will eat it, or the birds will eat the offerings, or my dog will eat the offerings. You know?
Yeah.
I used to stop him from doing that, but now I think, no, you know, whichever way it goes is the way it goes.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very nice to just leave food to rot, though.
No, I learnt that early on.
Because you're not even supposed to have rotting food in your house, are you? Even like,
no,
you know,
you're
not supposed to have it in your house.
No, it's not good energy.
Insects will eat it anyway if it's left outside. You know, all of the insects will eat it and feed off it. Like it'll just disintegrate really quickly.
Yes, my outside shrine became a sort of a huge insect house
Yeah.
because of the number of food offerings and apples and that I had out there.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm actually, I suppose in some ways I'm surprised not more people take advantage that it isn't a very, you know, it is a thin veil at that time, and it's a great way to connect. But I suppose it, you know, depends how much sort of you want to do the work with your ancestors. But unfortunately, Halloween is now in such a way that children aren't taught. It's about making some sort of offering and honouring the ancestors. I mean, my grandsons, I get them to make things, little offerings out of fir cones, and needn't always be food. You know, they'd make things with natural substances, fir cones and shells, and we put those out with a little candle on. I think anything like that is beautiful, and you know, we're honouring our ancestors, which is honouring the land that we're on.
Absolutely.
So that's I would suggest that for everybody. So
and somebody said there they just light a candle in the window for their ancestors. That's beautiful. Lovely. That's pretty beautiful. Absolutely.
Anything that acknowledges them, but a great time to do a journeying or a meditation. So I thought on sort of following on for what Mary was saying about the Celtic traditions, and following on from the fact that Lynn and I went and had a Celtic day round a very smoky and windy fire on Saturday. I thought we might do a meditation if people would like to. I thought we might go and visit our ancestors again to see whether you could all connect as we did before. Connect to our ancestors in the unseen realm. We'll go and light our... Yeah, would you like to do that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to try and do the opening ceremony. My limited knowledge of Celtic ways, but I'm learning. Rather than use the Native American way that I would, I'm going to use a Celtic. It's very similar, but I just think in honour of the Celts who used to do this, it will be a nice way to do it. So if you'd all like to, I'm going to switch off so I don't disturb anyone. I'm going to switch off my video.
Laura, do you want me to do the thing? Starting now or later?
Oh, yeah, lovely. I forgot about that. Yes, because the Celts were great storytellers, musicians, and so on. Wonderful. So
I got a Celtic drum here, which I'm just
wonderful,
Laura, in a hopefully non-destructive way.
Okay, so we're all going to, apart from Martina, unless you can do it with eyes closed, just get comfortable. Chill out. Okay, let's just ground ourselves too, so we can feel ourselves grounded into the Mother Earth. So we're going to open our sacred space now. So first of all, we're going to face the east. And in Celtic tradition, this is air and breath. It's also the land of spring and the land of the willow tree. So the east relates to the element of air. It is the mental realm, our childhood. And the east is to bring us gifts of inspiration, clarity, communication, change, and new beginnings. We call to the east so the air can bring a whisper of insight and guidance, or the force of truth in this full moon to clear the way for new paths to emerge. And we call to the east to connect us with the wisdom of the willow tree, which is the celebration of spring in the Celtic calendar. And now we turn to open sacred space of the south. The south is the place of fire. The south is our creativity. It is the place of summer, and it is represented by the hawthorn tree. The south relates to the elements of fire, the spiritual realm, our youth. We call to the south to bring us the gifts of purification, protection, creativity, and manifestation into action. We call to the fire of the south to teach us about the warmth of our hearts. We call to the south direction to connect us with the wisdom of the hawthorn tree, which relates to Beltane, which is the celebration of the beginning of summer in the Celtic calendar. We turn now to the west. In Celtic tradition, the west is the water, emotions, compassion, represented by the hazel tree. The west relates to the elements of water, the emotional realm, our adulthood, and we ask it to bring us the gifts of feeling, cleansing, healing, and compassion. We ask the West to connect us to the sacred waters, our blood, our ancestors, and to teach us to flow through life. As water can be calm, like a still lake or the strong current of a waterfall, to bring about movement and change. We ask the West to connect us to the wisdom of the hazel tree, which relates to Lammas, the celebration of the beginning of autumn in the Celtic calendar. And then we turn to the north. This in Celtic tradition is the place of earth. It's very physical. It's the place of abundance, of winter. It's represented by the ewe. So the north relates to the elements of earth, the physical realm, our elder years. And we ask it to bring us the gifts of abundance, of grounding, of strength and fertility. We ask the north to connect us to our bodies and show us how we rely on the earth for our nourishment and support. Teach us, north, how to connect to the wisdom of the yew tree and how to relate it to Halloween or Samhain, the celebration of the beginning of winter in the Celtic calendar. We now open sacred space in the traditional Celtic way. Blessed be. So before we start, and as a prayer and a revocation to help us on this journey, I'm going to read something I've read before, but not everyone here would have read it. So this is a birthright and legacy prayer we're going to open with. And it's a revocation too, so that we get the right relationships with our ancestors on this journey. In this moment of continuous now, as the sovereign being, I acknowledge with gratitude that because of my own soul interaction and choices in the seen and unseen world, the patterns of connection and interconnectivity of my soul family, and the weave of manifestation of my DNA bloodline, human ancestors upon this earth, and the support of our non-human ancestors like animals and elementals, that I have beautifully manifested with exquisite timing into my divine place on earth in this time-space equation, as a magnificent DNA soul-connected being, carrying all those potentials that have been honed and gathered as all these ancestors experience manifested life here. From my heart, at this time of Samhain, I acknowledge with wonderment and appreciation that they have lived, they have toiled, wept, suffered, yet they have healed, they have sung and danced and laughed. They learned the lessons that they could of life on earth. The ever-increasing sum total of their experiences covers the full spectrum that living on earth brings. For that is why they came. Their relevance is as potent today as when they lived on earth, and their experiences are our gifts. With a heart full of joy and gratitude, I step forward and claim my birthright and legacy to accept these gifts through this meditation. I accept that torch of eldership passed from soul to soul, from lineage to lineage, from generation to generation, from the very first ancestor who dreamed us all into existence. I open my heart, I open my superluminal pathways, I open my frequency to fully accept all these gifts and blessings, all the victories, the teachings, the love and knowledge that is my birthright and legacy to claim. For I am them and they are me, intertwined, interwoven through time and no time, a unity of colours that flows and creates the right relationship between the unseen and seen worlds. And for those unhealed ancestors, I claim my birthright and legacy to work in right relationship with the healed, well ancestors. My good, true and beautiful ancestors to clear all the harmful patterns through my great work of self-healing. Through right words, joy and dance, to transform the pattern into a teaching of what is possible when we all work together in the seen and unseen to outcreate and transmute these patterns. We share DNA in the bloodlines and soul connection in the soul families, and where these combine, we have even more potency. I now claim my birthright and legacy to have my soul family as my DNA lineage, as my friends, as my 1 degree of separation. For this has been lost throughout history, as the teachings of the indigenous have been overwritten with the global narrative of deceit. I claim all those prayers, poems, stories, all the lost teachings, all the wisdom from our elders, all the rituals and ceremonies, all the elemental connections, all that was good and true and beautiful that was handed down generation after generation, until technology and television, media and global narrative reduced them to ridicule and mythology, to fantasy and supposed untruths. And I revoke any part of the global narrative and media that ignores, deletes and misrepresents this natural flow of wisdom, of living on earth. For these ancient truths are the natural flow of the universe through us all. And no system misrepresentation, manipulation, no unwell, unsovereign ancestor, no aspect of fraud time can prevent this natural flow. For it is supported by universal energies and carries the full force and potency of millions of healed ancestors creating the divine law of one. It's unstoppable. It flows whether we accept it or not. I accept with gratitude this full flow as unfettered, unadulterated legacy, so I may be the medicine this world needs on the eve of Samhain and beyond. Blessed be.
Aho.
Blessed be. Aho.
So now we're all going to join hands around a very large etheric fire. So we've got our fire there with our lovely wood that's been prayed over, and let's make room for all of us, all on the Zoom and beyond, who want to join in. We'll stand round this fire now, acknowledging our ancestors who are now coming to surround us all as we connect to each other and we take ourselves now into the unseen realm of our good, true and beautiful ancestors. That's the only place we're going, to the good, true and beautiful ancestors. So see yourself going in whichever form you like, arriving to meet your council, and behind them the council that are across the fire from you now. There are millions and millions of good, true and beautiful ancestors. who want to come and bring you a message today. And you'll remember that he might not come forward in human form. He might come forward as an animal, a tree. Just accept what comes forward to you now. So you're in a peaceful place. You're very supported. We are in a sacred space, supported by all our higher selves, supported by all our good, true and beautiful ancestors. And take a step forward now. Leave our circle for a moment. We're still here supporting you all. Reach your hands across the fire and ask a member of your council to bring somebody forward who will bring a message for you. So today, with the thinning of the veil, we have already gone and got our bloodline lineage emissaries in another meditation. So bear those in mind with this meditation. But today, really, maybe ask one of them only to step forward with a message. A group might come, but ask for a representative of your DNA lineage and your soul family lineage to step forward and reach their hands out to you across the fire. The fire is our portal, our protector, our transmuter. And try and get a sense of what this person or animal, whatever comes forward, try and get a sense of something about them so that you can bring that back to the seen world with you. Try and feel the love that surrounds them, that they are projecting to you. Feel their presence. And see if there's a message, some words. And you know, it might not always come in words. They might hand you a gift. If no words are coming, just hold your hands out over the fire and see what they have brought you. Spend some time there, just enjoying the absolute beauty and warmth of this connection of your good, true and beautiful ancestors who want only the very best for you. They have so much love for you now. They honour your journey. As we have honoured theirs, they honour your journey. They tell you, I know that you have the courage to do this journey. And take your time. There's no rush in any of this. You're in no time now. Take your time. Have a look at the gift. Have a look at the message. Say what you would like to say to them, or give them a gift if that's what you would like to do. Connect in some way to them. And when you're ready, give them your farewells. And we will take ourselves back down around our earthly fire. And we will gather together around the earthly fire. And when we're all back around the fire, we will hold hands once again. The ancestors gradually depart. And perhaps when you're all returned with your messages and gifts, you can come back on screen so that I know before I close sacred space that everybody is back with us. Okay, so I'm going to thank the Celtic wisdom keepers. I'm going to thank them for their inspiration to do this journey. And I'm going to ask them to close sacred space with me now, to the north, south, east and west, above, below, within. I'm going to thank them for coming with us. So we have now closed our sacred space. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed
Aho.
be, blessed.
Aho.
Oof. Volunteers to share.
I want to hear what Amy went through.
She's gone from my screen. I think there was a tear or two.
Is she there? No.
I don't mind sharing.
Go on, Lynn.
I've been to this place several times before. It seems to be a place that I go to a lot if I'm meeting my ancestors. And I'm around a fire and there's other families there, and we're deep in the woods and there's caravans and horses and there's just swirling, dancing and music. And the gift they gave me was my love of bright colours, music and dance.
Beautiful.
What it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. All wrapped up in a bundle of joy, that sounds like.
Yeah, it's lovely.
That's a nice trip. Beautiful. Thanks, Lynn. Amy, do you want to share?
I'm a mess. I don't know. I don't know.
Will we come back?
Definitely.
Shall we come back to you, or do you want to? Yeah. Okay.
Give her a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Who else would like to share?
Well, I had a new one. It's always get interesting things, Laura, when you act as the medium with the ancestors. So mine was, it was quite simply just one being, but they were like, I don't know how to describe, like 8 foot tall, maybe 9 foot tall, black guy, kind of Saharan, wearing the traditional dress, and it was just quite unusual, really. And he just sat in front of me, and yeah, we exchanged some words. It was a good one. It was very unusual because I don't usually get the African kind of frequency coming very much from me, but it was very much so.
That's fabulous. I love how these are all so different.
Sorry, I didn't know I was.
Don't worry.
Yeah, you guys.
Laura, I'll tell you what you had to say, because I'm getting a zap already as I'm talking. But what they wanted us to understand is that as far as the ancestors are concerned, he was getting across that this is the final contribution. This is it. You know, this is the final contribution. That's the importance that we hold to our ancestors. You know, as much as we revere them, they revere us as well, greatly. You know, and we're the ones that are making the change. It's important to them that we know that, and we don't just think ourselves are not worthy.
What a great message. Thank you, Matty. Wow. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Laura. I don't even know how to explain what I went through.
How do you feel?
Had that. Wow, it was kind of starting off kind of sad in a way that I have to talk off.
Okay.
That's okay. That's okay.
That it
Didn't realize how much I love you.
Yeah.
Take your time. Have your drink, Amy. Might help you.
Didn't realize she was loved so much.
A drop of water.
I don't know what how to describe it. But it was kind of sad for me that that I felt lost but they showed me that, sorry.
Don't worry.
That I have, that potency that I have inside that I don't let anybody see because I'm afraid of it.
Wow.
Beautiful,
Wow.
Amy. Beautiful.
That
They love you so much. They love you so much, and you're so important to them. This is what you don't understand, that you are the final contribution.
So thank you, Betty. But I'm very just grateful for you all and showing me this, because I just and this guy was an Indian. He was like 7 foot tall, and he was just holding my hand and just looking. We were just looking in each other's eyes, and it was just beautiful. But that's what he said. He said, "You're not lost, that you just need to now let your veil down and let it be shown." So I mean, there's probably more, but that's how it felt. But
Fabulous, Amy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful, and thank you for
it was
sharing
very
that.
simple. Yeah, it was very
so
simple.
Profound, so profound.
So thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
amazing
you
how much
for being
information
here.
can be transferred without words, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
didn't say much. We didn't.
Just know.
Yeah. And I know that you get, I don't know how to explain it, but I love this whole idea, not idea even, I don't even know the words, but what you guys do. It's just, I just feel like I'm at home.
Yeah, you're with family.
That's how we feel with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're glad you're here.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you sharing. At the hub of ancestral interconnectivity, Alan says, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Who else would like to share? We'd love to know.
I don't mind to share.
Go on, Sue.
So at first it was like a purple cloaked figure, and I was like, ooh, who's this? It's going to be all mysterious. And then it was a very, very obvious representation of a very young, my grandmother on my father's side, and she was very young, but just so distinguished, so easy to identify that it was her. And yeah, there was a kind of energy of, yes, this is, because I've been contemplating on forgiveness for myself, and forgiveness, any residual work that needs in terms of forgiveness as the focus for my practice on the fire on Saturday and leading up to it, which I now see as this is the beginning of my celebration over the next few days. It's like the beginning of the wave, and thank you, it's a really potent one. And basically she was in my mind before, because when you were talking about cooking for the ancestors, because I always get compared to my gran. Wasn't particularly close to her, but I always enjoyed visiting because she made cakes every time you went. And she's famous for always eating her own cakes first, like as the baker. She would always tuck into them before anybody else got a look in. And I'm kind of compared to her quite a bit with my own cooking, because I like it. And so I was I've been contemplating, once you said about making a cake, I was like, oh yes, of course, that's the missing piece. Have I got time to make a cake? So it was all about my gran and the cake. But I was it's kind of guided to put my prayers into the cake and those intentions into the cake, because it's done. And that this will be a really and I suppose a peacemaker's contribution, if you like. And because cake making was in that theme, it just seemed really lovely. So it was like, it was sort of like, yeah, it's done and you've done your work. And this is like a celebration, kind of acknowledging that, if you like a rite of passage, but in celebration with cake. So yeah, so I'm going to roll with that one. Thank you very much.
Lovely.
She sounds great.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. If I get distracted, Mary, you might have to take over. But who else wants to share?
I just want to say hello, little man number 1. So good to see you.
Can't hear, can you? Here you are. Let me put that in your ear.
No, it doesn't really matter.
Can you hear?
Anyone who makes a cake, please have a piece for me when you make it and eat it for me.
We will.
Yes. And I had one of my very ancient teacher spirits coming forth. And again, you know, continuing with the celebration that Sue just mentioned, it was almost like welcoming me into the circle of teachers. And that was beautiful. So thank you very much. It was absolutely stunning. It was very, very beautiful. Very powerful.
It was, yeah. I had my grandmother come forth. She's dead 40 years yesterday. So I suppose she was going to come, yeah. I have met her before in a shamanic journey with a whole line of ancestors, and she was up near the top of the line. And it was like Mathew was saying, you know, it was like they were all watching the journey and what was happening, and they were very interested. But out of that came a horse into the kid, just jumped over the fire. Yeah. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder what the significance of that is. We used to have a lovely horse when I was young, whether it's that or not. He looked like that lovely brown horse.
One of your ancestors. It was.
Yeah.
And that ancient connection with a horse, isn't it? Human and horse connection.
And he stood at the back of the circle when we moved into the fire. He was there all the time at the back. Yeah. And I gave him fruit. I gave him fruit in my hand like this. That was it.
Beautiful.
Lovely, Mary. What lovely experiences. Sorry, you have to take over, Mary, a minute. Sorry.
Okay. So that was lovely. It wasn't for everybody. It was some beautiful experiences. I don't know if anybody else wants to share or not, or.
I'll share.
Okay.
This is Sarah. I'm here in the United States, and I just wanted to say to Amy, I understand the fear that's there. If you were in touch with your energies and were able to work with the energies in the land and understand when the solstice comes around, what's going on, that made you dangerous. And so in order to practice these ceremonies and whatnot became very bad. People would die if you did that. And I am so proud to have experienced this, to begin to reclaim that power individually, because that's where it's all going to be. It has to be each and every one. And thank you all for allowing me to be part of the gathering so that we can feel safe and start to recognize the energies and the power that we all have. We are all very powerful, but that was trained out of us, especially here in the United States, for so many years. And it's a beautiful thing to see it coming back alive. And yes, it's going to be emotional, because I didn't have any specific vision, but I started just crying. And I happened to be making my lunch at the time and decided I'd make some to share and place out as an offering. My ancestors have always been around me. And since I was young, since I was 9, I've lost person in my family. Like every 2 years, it was almost like a ritual. So the dead have always been like friends to me. So it was really neat to experience, to invite them and remember that we are here because of their doing. They originated this, and here we are carrying it forward. And it's just amazing. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. It's great. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you, Sarah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Actually, Ollie wanted me to go and see the moon, so he's on the right track.
Yes.
I'll let you take over, Mary.
Okay, well, I don't really know if we have anything else that we need to discuss at this stage. We have kind of looked at the traditions and the ancestors, and is there anything else anybody wants to add now at this stage? Because we're already
I can tell you a little story, Mary, if you want. That's something that's come up in my work recently. It's something pretty. I don't really understand it, but one of the big things at the moment for me has been understanding, like I was just saying, that we are the final contribution. And the more I look in my readings now, I kind of see the importance of people and how important we are to our ancestors. And I had a young lady around here the other day. Now this is not, I don't usually read for minors, but she's a minor. But I've been helping her mum out because the dad is one of these love and lighters who's conjured up all kinds of craziness, and the house is very haunted. And but this young lady out of the whole family is completely untouched. And you know, I always wondered about it. She's so intelligent and just you know, there's just something so different about her. And so we sat the other day and she started asking questions, and things started to come and arrive. And then all of a sudden behind her, there was this entourage of women. It was quite fantastic to see. And we were just sitting in my living room, and they had a golden scarf or a golden shawl, and they placed it around the back, around her neck from behind. They let the shawl kind of just drift down like that. And they said, "This is our one. This is the one." That's what they were saying to me. She's not going to be affected by any of this bullshit. Just know that she's the one. She's the one we've been waiting for. And I got this real sense of importance, you know. Wow. And it was just so beautiful. It was one of those off the cuff things that happen just on the random, you know. But to see the amount of love and dedication these ancestor spirits had for this young lady, and they could protect her, you know.
Yes.
But it doesn't sound, when you recount these experiences, it doesn't have the beauty that it does when you experience it, you know, when you can feel the love of these beings for the beings of the now.
Yeah, you feel touched by it, and it's difficult to sort of express that in words, because words kind of fail that, don't they?
They hold us as very important, Mary. They love us so much.
Yes.
Some do, some do.
Well, yes, there's the other ones too. I remember asking somebody once, you know, what do they do for you? I was half afraid to ask them, because I thought, you know, this is a powerful bunch. And they were saying that they can, they don't interfere. They won't interfere with your life and your life journey, but they can open and close doors for you. So that's what they will do if they're asked, but they won't.
And they can kick the crap out of anyone as well, you know, in the unseen. If they have to, they can kick the crap out of, you know, anything that you're not kicking the crap out of, basically.
And it's good, I think, for us to be, you know, more aware of them, as you say, because they're probably part of the precognitive workforce.
Very much so.
Yeah, yeah, that we can use them to that effect. Laura, I see you're back. Do you have anything else to add to this, Laura, before we finish, or do you?
Just to finish on, well, there's two here. I've got a full moon blessing, but just to round off the bit with the ancestors, I'm sure many of you have seen this as a Facebook post. I just love it. So I'll just read it now, if I may. Walking, I'm listening to a deeper way. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. Now, if that doesn't fill you with the love of the ancestors, and when you think of all the unions in love that have been throughout time to get us here now, how magnificent is that? How magnificent are we? We are the walking embodiment of our ancestors, and all that wisdom, all that love is here for us now just to tap into, as Amy has found out tonight, and many of us have. It's here for us now. We are the ancestors manifest.
Yes.
Oh.
So as I was saying, Laura, you know, just before you spoke, we need to communicate with them and ask them for help and let them know that we're here, because they won't interfere. They won't even do anything unless they're asked.
No, they need our permission. But let's go out there at Samhain.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Let's go and give it. Let's communicate. Let's sing, dance, anything. Let's go. I think I'll go and dance with them.
Yeah. Do you know, that was one of the things that Sarah was saying there is about the fact that people were persecuted for it, and originally dance was the shamanic journey. Dance was the most important part of it, the drum and the dance. But because it was outlawed so much, it became the rattle, and that's where we get this kind of passive sitting next to the fire kind of frequency from. Before that, it was movement, dance, and that's how you invocated spirits and the ancestors around.
Yeah, and as
remember, all of our ancestors are not just humans as well. We have animals, we have extraterrestrials, we have all kinds of different ancestry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the land ancestors of the land. Yeah.
And the inner earth, like all the insectoid beings that you know that I've been speaking with lately. They're all ancestors, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we can draw from their wisdom anytime we choose, really.
They're just waiting for you to ask. They're just waiting for you to ask.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they're only waiting.
And it's also full moon, so it's a double whammy. Or double whammy of all things good, true and beautiful.
Alan has said the time is now and the power is in sound.
Yes. Yes.
It has been good to do this, because to be honest, I have never given it the full attention either. You know, I have done the different rituals and stuff with the kids, but I wouldn't have been, you know, as involved in it as I could have been. So it's good to do this for me, even just to look over all the traditions and the ancestors and how they operate with us and all of that.
Yeah. So go out there, connect to your ancestors like Susan did, and let's see what we can manifest from that in our contribution in week.
Can I end my contribution on the night with a really cheeky joke?
Yes. Yes.
They like jokes. So it's true, but walking sort of in my duality and not wanting to show the anger that I be in at times and try to put the face on of being sweet when actually I'm really fucked off underneath. That kind of shadow has had manifested a really funny joke at one point, and I just think it's hilarious. And the joke is, when someone really does you over, I came out with this one for my friend, and I just went, it's a good job. I'm all about love, light and forgiveness, but I can't speak for my ancestors. It was like the ultimate case, but a cop out at the same time, and we just thought it was hilarious. So now and again, me and my friends go, can't speak for my ancestors though.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
But yeah,
good.
Well, I just want to thank all these ancestors tonight on the call, and it's been lovely. And thank you, Mary, for that contribution, because the open door is another part of the process. And thank you, Matty, because I just feel that we are in the moment and such powerful co-creators in the mix. You know, and for me, it is about another rite of passage of really putting it to bed, and that started not started with Laura, but Laura, your contribution was massive this year on the ancestors. So this celebration feels really potent way to put things to bed and to open a few new doors to what else is possible.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Well said, Sue.
Yes, I don't think there's anything else we need to say. We'll let Sue wrap it off.
We'll let her have the last word. So we'll see you all next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Bye.
Happy Samhain.
Great Samhain.
Samhain.
Yeah. Bye.